countries. But because most of the action actually was in Europe. You know, that, because boy, I'm telling you, the ships galore. And you know, sometimes I was thinking, any kind of little two-bit, what's his name, that they could tie up to unload the ships. And I can't imagine today, chances are a lot of these areas are vacant because the ships aren't there. And, but it was really something. But there was no getting, you know, the first time I saw a Liberty ship with a foreign flag on it, I said, hey, something's wrong. It was a Greek ship, but it was a Liberty ship. They had the Greek flag, and but some of the things that went on, like my brother-in-law, he was in on D-Day.
With the army?
Yeah, he landed. He actually landed in France, but. So, he says, what happened? He says, I hit the beach, got hit in the knee. By evening, he said, I was back in England. Spent the rest of the war as bartender in an officers' club. That was
Short trip.
No, a lot of, you see, not... Like, now, we have a neighbor passed away last week, and he was in the Navy, working on planes and whatnot, and the whole mine, you know, and it's just, he never saw the way, because he was down in, what is it, for the war, in around by Brazil, Argentina, something in that. That's what he spent, you know, looking out. They used to fly across and see if there was any German submarines. And as far as I know, they never did show up there. But, and yet, at least in I actually saw it. You know, I knew what it's like to get shot at. But I figure, I don't glory over the fact that I stood there and got nothing. You know, I mean, as far as, like I know one fellow I worked with, he was a shore patrol on the trains. That's all he did during the war. He was drafted in. They put him on as a guard on freight cars or passengers. That's all the war. That's all the fighting he did. And yet, all the things that were allotted, you know, on the GI Bill. He was available for him, or he should have been. But it's just that, not that I was looking out for, but it's just the idea that I remember once I had come back from North Africa, and when we left the what's his name, the Maritime. We had a uniform, some kind of a halfway uniform. Nothing else. You know, because we had no money. The only way you're going to have to go and buy it. But you haven't earned enough money to. So all you did is just wore that uniform, to the jacket and everything. And,
is that why they issue black uniforms?
Yeah. And, so you figure, hey, you're painting and whatnot. What are you going to do? Huh? And so I remember this one time. I was coming back, and you can't help but notice. You know, here's a guy. You're sitting next to a guy, a young man, looks in pretty good condition, and. So all the time, you know, he was just coming back from boot camp and and whatnot, and you know, so yeah, sure. So he looks at me, he says, by the way, gee, how come you're not in? I says, I am. Huh? So I pulled out my papers. I says, this is the reason why I'm already in. Even before you got to boot camp, I've already been there. But it's just that, no doubt, when he does get into action, things will be change. His whole impression of what goes on. But you like to. I don't know. In the beginning, it seemed like, hey, we had a job that's got to be done. We've got together, regardless of what service you are. Hey, we're going to get it done. But then, as time went on, especially when Roosevelt came out with the GI Bill, and and even to this day, I says, actually, what Roosevelt should have done is kept his mouth shut and not include us in part of the bennies. And I said, otherwise, man, I might have gone along with him. He said, hey, I wasn't in the military. You know, when you have, I'm supposed to have what's his name? A veteran. I'm supposed to be a veteran. Well, just as soon as I see that there's something going on and it's military, I figure, hey, forget it. They've got nothing for me. This is, and not that it's that important, because I figure, hey, after a long life, what the hell? What else do you want? And so, if but see what he did is he come out with that GI Bill. Then just before he passed away, he suggested something should have been given, for the merchant seamen. See, what they did in the beginning, the seamen, they used to have different, it all depended on how dangerous the area was. They would have, if you sailed in that, you were allowed so much compensation for you. And, but in the beginning, when I didn't even know, for heaven's sakes, as an AB or an ordinary, how much money I'd be making. It was just, and I figured, hey, look, the job has got to be done. Let's get it done. But all of a sudden, you get these factions that, and it says, so what's the big deal? Well, benefits. I got minimal. As a matter of fact, for the first 2 years, I figured, hey, they're taking out for income tax. The hell, I won't file. Well, I got to talking and whatnot, so I made an appointment with the IRS to go down. I had skipped 2 years, and even then, I could have, if I'd wise up, I could have gone and say, look, I can file at any time of the year. And it was legitimate. But, so anyway, so when I went down there, and I have all my paperwork, and the fellow says, is this all? I says, hey, it's all the paper I got, by income and whatnot. And if it's not there, I never made it. So, a lot of them begin to think, oh, the kind of money, I know, I dropped the, what's his name? The dentist. His brother was a armed guard. He himself never went into service. And every time you went there, all these dinner, you hear, boy, the kind of money you guys made. And I knew, because when I went to the IRS, all he says, that's why he asked me if all my papers. I said, yes. I said, because all these people think I made so damn much. And actually, if you knew enough about it, you knew that, see, that when I'm not on a ship, I don't make anything. I'm not making anything. And so he and I said, look, Doc, I don't like it. I says, every time I come in, that's why I drop. I said, I've had enough. Forget it. There's all the other dentists I can go to, and all I want to do is keep their mouth shut. And But I says, you'll notice, anytime I went, when you got through working on, I says, you got paid, right? So I says, then again, when I repeat that, I said, maybe I was making a lot of money, but I didn't know it. Who else was paying my bill to you? But, and then I said, I dropped it because I didn't like as a matter of fact, he had one of these girls that would clean your teeth before they, yeah. And I used to love the girl. All the time she's over there talking, you should do this, you should do that. And maybe at least an hour, repeat. So finally I said, look, I said, you're a great do you believe that your body is yours? She says, yes. Well, why don't we look at it this way? This body is mine. I don't give a damn what you do with yours. And I don't want you to give a damn what I'm doing with mine. But it's just a din. Hey, look, so you give it pointers on using that gas. What's his name between your teeth and all. But it's just that. But I had this feeling. There was a lot of these because when you read the obituary, and you'd be surprised at how many are listed as seamen, and I says, I was proud of what I did, and I says, actually, I could have used it. I wound up in somewhere in a shop there, or as a 4F, and I wouldn't have to nothing to fret about. But it's just this that okay. So I stuck my neck out, and somehow I had some ideas. I said, something went wrong somewhere because I'm still here. And it's just that you just can't put your hands on it as to. But I used to like, you see, and I was fortunate too because living in Hartford, if I went to New York, I would, so we'd come in on a Saturday, so I didn't have to be back until 8 o'clock the next Monday morning. So anytime I bought a railroad ticket, I always got a round trip because I figured, come hell or high water, I'm going to use both of those tickets. So anyway, and then I say, what happened is that girl of mine, boy. After I met her, I never sent her brother another letter. Yeah. But so it was really something. Boy, that was it. It's just like magnet. That you open the door. And this is.
How did you guys keep in touch during the war?
By mail, letter. And she always knew. She always knew where I was. Because anytime she got a letter from me, I was telling you the time I used to break my words up. And when you start at the broken part, the next one will give you the next letter, the next one, and you'd get the whole city, the whole port, or wherever that was at.
The censors were none the wiser?
Yeah, and the you see, and because even today when I write, there's a lot of time I still split words, and I suppose, and then I say once you got the name, I says I just keep on splitting, so you just ignore that because you already know the place that as a matter of fact she had known that I hadn't been in Russia even before I got back to the States. And, but she was
How often would your return trips bring you back?
It all depends. On the whole, with one way, it'd take you about 5-6 days, providing you don't have bad weather. And sometimes you wound up the whole convoy, which just got pushed back. But you never believe it by me because we were pointing that way. But the tail end of the and so what I used to do is when we come back into New York or Boston, it was more convenient for Boston because you didn't have that far to go to the docks. You know, when I come back to get back on the ship. And then you knew all the guys, and all you do is pick up the phone, because a lot of times you'd come back and the ship isn't gone. It's gone. So all you do is call up the union office, and Sweeney, Irish, isn't it? And he would tell you what it was, and then you sort of you go down there, but it was. You begin to pick up all this. Well, you begin to know because you take like what's his name, New York. They would send you down as far as Philadelphia, you know, to the same ship. Whereas usually with Boston, it was in the Boston area, east of Boston. I'll never forget that one. We went down to. Ship, and we're coming down to this Messina Strait between Italy and and so we passed this fishing boat, and the guy hollers out, "Hey, you from east of Boston?" Yeah. But I don't know. It was, but then again, you know, you have, you know, when you think back. You didn't have the responsibilities that you have today. You know, you were on your own. You what went on, and I always came home to my parents, you know, to spend any time that I was taken off, and there was no paid holidays or paid or any of that because see, like a lot of times. Like with the Navy, they'd come in, they had an allowance for clothing. We didn't. The only clothing we had is when you went to, I used to go to Sears just outside of Boston. I used to get my foul weather gear and whatnot, and I paid for it. That was not a given. But it didn't bother you. You figure, what the heck? You know, all you did was just jump into a streetcar, and in about 10 minutes you're over to Sears. And what I used to like is you sit down, they take an order, and then you sit down and wait. You got your number, and the woman would call out. She says, "Give you your number, and your items are right there. Try them on if they fit, the boots and shoes or whatnot." It was great. And then, okay, so you paid her. They'd bundle it up for you, and you went back to the ship. But otherwise, because they had what they call the slop chest, that the company got the benefit of that. You could buy shoes, you could buy cigarettes, 60 cents a carton.
It's a little different, huh?
Oh, we didn't have to pay tax. Now, for the six, what is it, about $40, $50 for 10 packs of.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's
yeah.
about $7.
I never had any use for that stuff, but so anyway, that so in the slop, the only time you bought anything in the slop chest when you had no other alternative. You could buy shoes and whatnot, but the price was ridiculous. And a lot of times when I was in London, England, we were allowed to go to the what's his name, and they give you a ticket how much you could. So I used to like those British hobnail boots that their troops wore,
right? And
you had the slip and whatnot. And the thing is, I know I caught hell from the old man like that because you know, when you through the steel deck, you know, that all that sound is coming through, and the old man is sleeping underneath there. Get them damn things. I said, it's too cold to walk around barefoot. But it was it was great. It was great. But I said, you had no responsibilities then. No family, no nothing that you had to be concerned with and whatnot. Because I remember, like, during the Depression, my father, you know, 2 years, you couldn't buy a job. But you see, he was always very careful the way he handled his money. He wasn't one for throwing it away. Yeah, if he spent it, it was for a good reason. And so he managed, you know, eking it out. And and we had bought a farm, a dairy farm in Bethany, Connecticut. And then when he sold that, then we moved over to South Windsor. So he was, I say frugal, if you want to call him that. And so he would, and he managed. I don't know how the heck he took care of his taxes and whatnot, you know, for the town. And then, so finally he got down to one point. He went to the town. He says, "Look," he says, "I haven't worked in 2 years." He says, "My money's running out, and I need some help." He says, "Well, maybe we can't do anything." He says, "You got a house." He says, "All I want you to do, give me the assessed value of the house. You can have it." They were not interested, and somehow or other, he went in the trucking business. He and a fellow bought 2 trucks, and he wasn't doing bad at all. But then finally it got caught up with him, so we wound up in the city of Hartford, and then he went to work in a shop, and that was. But it was. I say he had his concern, his response was his responsibility, not mine. You know, you never had to worry about a full belly or one place to sleep, and so that. But otherwise than that, we went along well. And what shook me up once, he died of cancer, the early part of rectal cancer. So I lived I was already married then. I lived on the first floor. My folks lived on the first floor. I lived on the second floor, and then we had a tenant on the third. So that would scare the hell. Here's my father, you know, rugged guy, not very big, but. And my mother calls me down. I go downstairs, and he was on hands and knees on his in the toilet, banging his head in the floor. He says, "I can't stand it." I said, "I can't." I said, "What the hell are you going to do?" You talk to the doctor, and the doctor, all he tells you, look, he says, "I'm giving him the maximum." He says, "If I move it up another notch, it'll kill him." He says, "I can't do that." And so that was the last time we took him from the home, St. Francis Hospital. As a matter of fact, after that, a couple of days later, he tried to jump out of the third floor window of the hospital. And how I happened to see it is the nurse, you know, that book that where she has to list all everything that's you know, there's medications and all this other stuff. And when she grabbed the book when she saw I was looking at it, you know, we get about and that's how I found out that he tried to jump out the window. And that I you know, it just. So anyway, at one time, he come upstairs, and he gave me his wallet. And he says, Walt, in case I don't come home from the hospital, you take and divide the money with, between the kids. He says, okay, Pa, you want it? This way. So then after, and I said, Pa, what is the matter with you? $20,000 in cash, and you're going to work in a wallet? I couldn't believe it. I was scared. I figured, gee, you don't go walking around with money like that. And there's this guy who was going to work in a shop and whatnot, and he's got him $20,000.
Did you have a bank account?
No, because at that time, because of the depression and bank holiday,
No bank insurance.
bingo.
I see.
A lot of the old timers, even my mother-in-law, she lost a few $100s from the bank closed up at that time. They just didn't trust them. And that's after Roosevelt come in.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, it's and then you think so. With what we have been able to do or can do, why do we have the problems that we do? And you get the thing that gets me with these politicians is, I want to, when I vote for anybody, I'm serious on that. I try to feel I want to vote for someone who's going to look after us, not us looking or somebody's buying them off. And I find it hard to believe if a guy is going to collect all this money from strangers, like not only that, but you see, like, remember up in Massachusetts, Obama went to see that guy took Ted Kennedy's seat, and so what happens? So you brought the president in. Do you ever take a look at it and think, Obama could never vote for him because he is not a resident of Massachusetts. He's a resident of Chicago, Illinois. And then you're trying to convince me that he's a better candidate. You can't help it. But all I want to know is this. Look out for us. Because, without our vote, I know they make a lot of money because we had some of these politicians that, like even Dodd. Hey, he used to be considered one of the poorest guys in Congress. Hey, he's right up on top there. Somebody's being generous to him, unless he's got a printing press in the cellar. But you just
Did you feel that way during the war?
At that time, see, I was too young to vote. Now, but once I got married, I don't. I have no party. Because I said, so what's the difference? If you're like here in East Hartford, I've heard some Democrats. This is a Democratic town, and I've heard some Democrats condemning other Democrats. I said, in a case like that, why is it this guy is getting back in when you're opposed to him? I didn't vote him because all I do is if a guy's in office, I says the next election there's going to be another guy in this place because I figure they should be listening to us. We're not supposed to be listening to them. But the only time, like I know down at the what's his name, the legislature. Now I know all of a sudden we're never quite sure just who's our representative, and yet, come election time, all of a sudden all this paper is being stuffed in your mailbox. All the wonderful things he's done for us, and I never got an answer when I used to tell him. I said, I read the newspapers, TV, the radio. How come I haven't seen it. All this is promises that you made, that you've already passed. Or it's already been. Where is it? That's as far as it goes. You know? And this is, you know, it should be the people. This is you. But they completely ignore you. You'll never find any of those that come around here. Oh, when they're knocking on your door, say, "Gee, hey, Walt, how are things going?" You know, that's I just stopped by. I haven't been in the neighborhood. Just stopped by, and how you think? Forget it. They never. You'll never catch him unless his undertaker would be on the street. Then he'd be here. But there's so much that. You listen to these and say, when are you going to start looking out for us? And furthermore, okay, so we have representatives or senators, all these different areas, or different members of the Congress. But by the same token, maybe you tend to favor the guy that you voted for. But then it says, what happens? Like with that one in Minnesota, they gave him how many $300 million break to vote on that, and that was most of the ridiculous health bills that they wanted. And why did you? And yet here the people, his voters, don't want him to vote for it. And he goes ahead and votes for it. Aren't you listening? That's why I expect to come next election there's going to be a big change. And it may be unless Obama comes up with something. All right, the man is educated. There's a lot in his favor. But there's a hell of a lot that is not in our favor. And when you start pulling for people that, some of the worst, like you've heard of the deal about that, where they cover your head there and they dump water on you, waterboarding. He says, "Now what the hell do you need that for? Who cares? It doesn't bother me, but it looks like hell. Is this the way here you got a police force, with the CIA and all, and why do you have to resort to these? And he's on trial and whatnot, and then they turn around, that Arab, they want to make have his trial, a civil trial in Manhattan. Forget it. Guantanamo. That's as far as I can give them. Take care of the bum there. And obviously, if you see the guy goes in swimming, so you hand him a couple of bricks. Go ahead and swim. But there's so much good that could be done.
Did you spend any time in Cuba? Well, you were in Merchant Marine?
No, I didn't. I went.
Was there ever any legs in Havana?
I went to. I went through that, see, because we picked up hospital supplies in Barry, Wales. So we went through the canal and to the Philippines. So we lowered a lifeboat, put the old man in it. We went, took him ashore. The guy in charge of the port says, "And what the hell are you guys doing here?" Hey, orders. He was the military. He was the governor or something. And so they didn't need it. So we brought it all the way back and unloaded it in Stockton, California. Just imagine, we had a load of that. It was about 3,000-mile round trip that we made with it. The money that was wasted.
So you filled the lifeboat up with?
No, so we lowered the lifeboat so the old man could get ashore to report to the whoever was in charge of the port, and he was no part of it. He says, "You're not supposed to be here." He says, "All we know, hey, we're down in the Atlantic side of the canal, and all they tell us, because wait, it was a flock of ships, one right after the other. The ships are going through the canal, all going out the Philippines. And I can imagine, every time you're going along the way, and here's another ship going right to the same place that we just left. I said, God. And so we wound up there, and they unloaded us, brought it. And then seeing a case like that, I had signed on originally in New York. So the thing about it is, we paid off after that trip. We paid off in San Francisco. So I was due $125 in transportation back to the East Coast. So in other words, I got one from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then from the West Coast to the East Coast. My transportation was covered. And like the mate told me, he says, Walt, he says, stick with us. No, I says, I got to see that little girl. I got to see her. I took a train across the country, and so then I took a couple of weeks off at home, and I go to New York. I throw in my ticket. I look on the bulletin board. I says, I'll be damned. The ship that I had gotten off in San Francisco was in New York looking for a new crew. I said, and I could have, in other words, I made $125 off of it. I would have had what was it, $240, no, $250. That would have been all in my own pocket. And all I had to stay on the ship for another month.
How often did sailors only make one journey? Did most of the people who signed up for the Merchant Marines stay in the Merchant Marines?
No. You come and go, because what it was just like a job.
Okay.
It was basically, you signed a contract, what they called articles, between you and the company for one foreign voyage. When you come back to the States, you get you're paid off. All your money and whatnot is all paid off. And then if the mate tells you that or say like in the deck department, then what you would do is, if he asks you to stay, then you can sign articles when they got through loading the ship for another foreign voyage. The same thing. And so it's always this back and forth. It isn't like you say you go to work for someplace, and year after year it's always the same routine. But the ship is not. Every time you get involved with a different foreign port, a different port outside of the States, either the West Coast or the East Coast, then you have to re-sign articles, the contract. And then he tells me, and here she is. I said, here I look at it, there she is. I said, the mate was right. Because he came from California. It was in around the Los Angeles area. And he was telling me, he says, stay with the ship. He says, we'll be going back. We went up to, I had a chance to go to Alaska for something, lumber or something. Nope. I was anxious to get to see the girl. I says, I'd have been a lot richer if I had said, hey, I'll take another month off before I see her.
So
but
how much were you paid usually per trip?
It all depends the length of the trip. In the beginning, like as an able seaman, I was paid $100 a month.
How much were the naval crew aboard?
I have no idea. I know when I went into the maritime, when I was in the school, it was $25 a month. That's what the military is being paid. And then after that, it just went up. But see, like when I took time off from work, work or off the ship, I would have to pay my way. It isn't that there was no paid holidays or vacations. It came out of your pocket. Every article of clothing you wore, boots, shoes, stockings, underwear, all that you bought them.
And that's why
That was no government issue.
So aboard the ship, as long as it was work appropriate, you could wear whatever.
Oh yeah, because usually when I left the the Maritime, I had the uniform. It was a mess because especially if you're working or greasing and all. Hey, and that's all you got to wear. And so anyway, you'd so that. And once you collect your first paycheck, or you could take a draw on the money that you have already earned, and then you could go across and get clothing that you needed, shoes, socks, pants, all, and then you were on your own. But where in the military, you were set. Like I say, when we used to come into Boston. The what's his name? A lot of the members of the gun crew used to go up to the naval depot, and they for clothing. They were issued so much a year. Something the only time we got it issued when you paid for it. Boots, whatever, and a lot of time it's just a. It worked out in some ways good, and in some way, like sometimes you'd get on a ship, and a lot of the guys that left the ship, sometimes you find a pair of jeans or something that would fit. You go over a pair of shoes, and you'd wash them, and it was a toilet plunger, and you'd wear them, especially when you're working on deck, and you got all this paint and grease and whatnot. So when you got too much trouble to keep clean, you just threw it over to the side and let it go at that. But so it used to. But I said that there was nothing. There were no deductions as far as tax goes. For clothing or anything like that. You paid for it and that was it. And I says, when I went to see the IRS, and the guy says, these are, and I'm looking at the guy and says, now he was a bit older than I, maybe about 10, 15 years. And I says, here he's got himself a nice cushy job, not sticking his neck out because nobody's going to clobber him. And I says, I go out there, and then this guy's, gee, are you sure this is all you? Good God, what else do you want?
What was the most dangerous cargo you ever carried?
All of it. Now, honestly, because it was all mixed.
Okay.
Now, sometimes what they used to do is, like, planes, tanks, they would fasten them to the deck.
With them too, or just...
Oh yeah, because a lot of time, like I recall once in South Boston, they used to have these chisel trucks with and two 100-pound bombs would be sitting on the blades. And this one time, look at the guy. He stopped all of a sudden, and here these bombs. There was no tail fins, not go shooting down. And I said, "Oh boy, here we're going. I'm gonna get to heaven in a hurry." But see, the thing is, you just can't take and drop them and explode. You have to put the tail fins to direct it, and then you screw on like a propeller. And as the thing is dropping, it tightens up, and then when it hits, it's cocked, And you had everything. Sometimes the drums of gasoline, and I told you with mustard gas. And when they were unloading that mustard gas, in London, England. I could, even today, I just, utter stupidity.
Seems like a vulnerable place to.
I says, will you stop and figure? If the Germans come over and bombed this place, we'd wipe out the whole city of London. Because, well, something like 100 tons of mustard gas. That's a lot. That's a lot of mustard gas. All you needed.
Gas or liquid?
It was liquid. Once they opened it up, then you would have a problem. We weren't even allowed on deck when they were unloading the ship.
Was that top secret? Did you know that there was?
Well, chances are pretty good the Germans knew. The only thing is we knew because there was an army captain who was in charge of it. He was, and there was 2 sergeants with him that sailed with him. But I say I'd stand on deck and looking over at the what's his name, the river, and Thames, yeah, and I'm looking over at the Houses of Parliament, and I says, you know, you could evaporate the whole thing, you know. But one thing though, we had one fellow there, like some of the guys who go ashore, like the Houses of Parliament and whatnot, and so they met. What the heck's her name? Oh, damn it all! She was the burr under Winston Churchill's saddle. Lady. Take her name. She was a lady through marriage. Lady Astor. A little bit of a thing, fight. Oh boy, I wouldn't want to tangle with her. So they went from the ship. They went to and they met her, and Lord Walton came with her. Boy, I didn't feel any better with them or without him. But so they invited her to come aboard, and she had in the officer's mess, and you know we put out a spread three times a day. You were gonna put on a bulge. So and she came aboard, met the crew, and so she was the one. I'll never forget that. Told Winston Churchill, if I was your wife, I would feed you poison. And he turns around, looked at her, and said, if I was your husband, I'd take it. And I'll tell you, but I say a little bit of a thing, my man, scrappy. Ooh. But she was always, you know, and their setup, you know, is right out in public. You don't have to go through the routine like these phonies here. You got something to say, you get up and say it. and boy, she was, and she come out and went around the ship and looked at. The chances are pretty good. If she would have got on the ship, it had to be something like a liner because she isn't making trips on a freighter. But she was quite a woman.
How did she get invited aboard?
Huh?
How did she get invited aboard?
One of there was about half a dozen of the crewmen went over to the Houses of Parliament, and they met her, and they asked her, invited her to come aboard, and she came with Laura, and I'll tell you, quite a girl. And then I had to run in with the first one in Murmansk. The second mate come down. After we had tied up, I went and I had coffee. I was on the wheel at the time. I went down and I had a cup of coffee. The second mate come down. He says, "Hey Walt," he says, "I was talking to what's his name? The pilot, brings you in. Any ships coming in, they don't come in by themselves. They have to hire a pilot to bring it in, and he directs all the tugboats and whatnot. And so anyway, yeah, I keep losing my. So anyway, he comes down. He says, I was talking to the pilot, the Russian pilot. He says, I mentioned to him that you were Russian. He'd like to see me. I said, so he said, you want? I said, sure, I'll go. Just more out of curiosity. And so we went up. We were in where the officers' messes, and we sat down. He was asking me about my folks and whatnot. Well, the king was still running the show at the time. They left Russia, and so he asked, "Did we own property?" Yeah, we owned a house in Hartford at the time, because my father in all his life in this country, he had I'd say about 90% of it. He lived on his own property. He was this is the way he did it. So one thing led to another, and then he called my father a traitor. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. And it came to my mind. I says, just imagine, my father went through hell during the Depression. Now here's a man, for all I know, might have gone hungry just so the family would eat, rather than for himself. And then you're calling him a traitor? So I popped up, and so anyway, and I says, look, after I mentioned about my father, and I looked at the second mate, and this guy was a colonel no, he's a captain in what's his name, Russian Navy. So I'm standing up there, and I'm looking at I didn't say anything to him, and I said, as far as I'm concerned, I got nothing more to say to this guy. And I says, and what I should have done, as a matter of fact, I could have told him in Russian exactly what I was going to tell him. Sukin sin, mother screwer. I could have handed it to him, and I walked out. And so when I was on the wheel and we got this, I told him, I says, my father went through hell. I never knew exactly what kind of hell he went through, but he says he took care of the family. No matter how come hell or high water, the family was taken care of. We may have cardboard for soles in our shoes, but the part is, like my father used to say, heaven looks down and said he's wearing shoes. The devil said he's got holes in them. And but that hit me, and I says, it's hard. That what he went through, but he's well, God, the Almighty will take care of him. But see, he was tainted in too much of that stuff from the old country. Boy, I had more leather in the seat of my pants than you find in a pair of shoes. And he used to have a razor, because a razor strap just outside the door. I don't know why. Why? Sooner my mother would say something. There comes the strap. We're gonna catch hell. We're gonna catch hell. Sure as shooting. And what used to drive my father mad on the verge is obstinacy. he would be wailing him. He'd take me by the arm, and I'd be running around him. And with that razor strap, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't. I didn't give a damn how hard it hurt. I'm not going to give it. And he'd only feed me that much more. This is you damn fool. So after when he got tired, then he said, but, I'll tell you, you know, when I think back, I just, but I still think, boy, that I would have liked to have met his father or my grandfather. Because that little SOB. And for all I know, he might have belted me if I. But the way they all disappeared, nobody seemed to. Is that they were lost in a war and whatnot? It's a shame that. And yet you take a look and say, all you got to do, you get some of these fellows that have a modicum of sense that they could get together, thresh this out without having to kill anybody. You know, but one thing I had seen, like Russians and Polish, never hit it off. Over here, you know, and I said, like I remember my uncle, he was in the First World War, and him and a Polish fellow got in a fight. Why? Because one guy shot one more Germans than the other guy did. So what's the big deal? You know, who the hell cares? You know, as a matter of fact, that war shouldn't have been going on in the first place. It's utter stupidity that. And then you come over and say, God, all this. And the billions they spend, like with that, why not put some of that money there for the good of the world? Because believe me, with everybody going their own way, we can save we can use an awful lot of help. But then you gotta say, you get these guys in politics, you can't believe them. They've been making so many false statements that they sound good. What's the name of that Obama? Great speaker. But then, like a lot of these politicians, and then after he's through talking, and look around and say, gee, what did he say? Garbage. Because you know darn well some guy's going to come along and say the same thing as it, and oh man, they're going to clap. I've always felt as this. I wouldn't go. Hey, even if you're standing in front of the house, I wouldn't bother. If I don't like the guy, I'm not going to go out to see him. For what? I don't like him. If you know, if I like the guy, as a matter of fact, there's only one time that we had a mayor of East Hartford, a little bit of it, and she was a spitfire, and that's the only one when she used to run, she ran for mayor of East Hartford, so I kicked in $20, you know, but that was it. That I wouldn't go overboard because I liked the way she carried on. She was for us, but I mean, Republican. I was not a Republican, but I figured I like her as an individual, and it comes from one of the old East Hartford families. As a matter of fact, she's more a part of East Hartford than these Democrats that are supposed to be running the town. But she, and I tell you, she was but a lot of these things that could have been worked out. Like I remember once, I had done I had the snowstorm. I was doing the sidewalk, and I do my I used to do mine. I used to do the next door, Harriet, and then Mrs. McCann. I used to do hers because her husband, he cried about 10, 15 years ago. He died in an automobile accident. And so I used to do those three. And hey, they've been good. That like even Mrs. McCann, she had a heart attack there about a year ago, and she said, well, when I was laid up for 7 months, her husband had their son do my sidewalk and whatnot, and so he said, well, he says, don't worry about the snow. The simple reason, I'll have a lot. What's the name? The boy take care of it because he had a snowblower, and good enough. So then, after he had passed away for a good many years, I used to keep doing. I used to do their sidewalk. You figure, hey, neighbor, all by herself, so why should she? And so. No problem. I don't have to fret, especially like now. We have this fella comes, a young fella. He used to be one of these, work for a place, where trimming hedges and lawns and whatnot. And he does our sidewalk, fertilizer and whatnot. And he's giving me a big break, in a lot of ways. And does our sidewalk. Then when you got it was slippery, spread salt on it. So I don't have to fret. I'll admit I don't like it because it's still digging because I says I should be doing that, not him. But the part is this: I must have I must have better than 50 years on him, so he's got all the equipment, so no problem.
People helping each other.
Yeah, it does because when you need, it's just that when the chips are down, there's somebody to depend on. And like Harriet, I gave her a set of keys for the front door, and even when she comes to the mail, there's the two keys she's got on a wire. Because she says, like a lot of time, I'll leave the doors unlocked. That's why I think I called at the time. Yeah, and so, but because she says if I find your door unlocked, she says I got the key. Because she says you may be laying on the floor. So I figure I'm prepared. Then I got a lock box out there. So and they so when I hit the. If you'd hear about a week, you see I had a lump on my head.
Yes.
Where I went down, I fell down in the room. Yeah. Hey.
What was that?
Yeah. So we went to see the doctor, and it wasn't that noticeable. But when I take the glasses off, it's like a raccoon, black eyes, lump, and I noticed there's very little of the what's his name left, but the lump, and but that's no problem. You need a problem. You need some help. Hey, just give us a call, and like they says, regardless day or night, you need us, give us a call. The only thing is when you're laying on the floor, I can't reach the damn thing to open up. And I didn't want the fire department to tear up the front door.
They'll probably use
Yeah. But now I got this alert that the beauty part about it is that every so often, about in the middle of the month, you hear the signal. And you can hear it all throughout the house. As a matter of fact, you can hear it within about 400 feet of the house.
So they use it as a test?
Yeah.